Well, I don't know if they were gentry. The house, I think, now has about 10,000 square feet. Oh, I'm talking about, sorry about that. Our family seat, this house, it's called a ma. You don't pronounce the S, it's M-A-S. And a ma in Saint-Paul-de-Caisson, which is 4 kilometers from Pont-Saint-Esprit. And it's surrounded by vineyards. It was the largest vineyard at one time, but the vineyards were sold, and when my mother inherited, and her siblings inherited, this house had been in. It's made of limestone. It's a limestone house, and 300 years, and more than 300 years in the family. And I went to City Hall in Saint-Paul-de-Caisson, and I asked them to let me see the land records, and it was Julien. It was there. That's where the French side of the family, my mother's French side, comes from. And but they're very provincial. And I'm sure that they're not going to be happy to hear that I think that they're provincial, and that it was my great uncle and his wife. I believe it was his wife who objected to my grandmother when they escaped North French Indochina in 1946, and they went home to this house, this huge house. They were turned away. They were made to live in, like the servants, in a smaller house on the property with 3 bedrooms, instead of in the house that they would eventually, ironically, inherit. They were turned away from a house that they were going to inherit, because my grandmother was half French and half Vietnamese, and she looked so Vietnamese. My uncle told me, and he was the youngest of all the uncles. He didn't care about how things looked. He cared about telling the truth. And I went to him because I have an uncle who wrote another book. I have an uncle who's written a book, Julien, Albon Julien, and he's written about their lives. My grandfather going from France to North French Indochina, and about living in Vietnam and in North French Indochina when the Japanese occupied. He wrote a book. It's Typhon sur le Filiao, and it was published by Hachette, by Albon Julien. In there, it was interesting because the Japanese at one point, it's in French. I had to translate a lot of it with Google Translate, and it works. You could figure it out. And they were gonna. I had an uncle who was about 6'2" or 6'3", and the Japanese wanted to arrest him. They were talking about arresting him because they thought he was an American spy because he was 6'2" or 3". It's very unusual height in Indochina. So my mother was 5'8" in stocking feet, so the French side had a lot of tall people, I think.